In this powerful episode, we sit down with Investigator Chandra Cleveland of Private Investigations and Consultants Group, based in Columbia, South Carolina. With over 30 years of experience in law enforcement and private investigations, Cleveland has dedicated her career to fighting for justice for women of color who are victims of human trafficking and violent crimes. Known for her no-nonsense approach and relentless determination, Investigator Cleveland shares her insights into the complexities of human trafficking, the unique challenges faced by women of color in seeking justice, and the strategies her team employs to rescue victims and hold perpetrators accountable. You'll also hear actionable advice on how to identify the signs of trafficking and what you can do to help combat this crisis in your community. If you or someone you know is a victim of human trafficking, contact the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-888-373-7888 or text HELP to 233733. Join us for this inspiring conversation with a true champion for justice. Don't miss it, because when Investigator Cleveland is on the case, she gets it done.
I'm joined today by Chandra Cleveland, who is Investigator Cleveland to me. But you do a lot of things, and I'm really excited to have you here today to talk about all the things that you do and to bring more awareness to human trafficking. Welcome to Crime Desk.
Thank you so much for having me, Troy. It has been a pleasure getting to know you.
Well, I can definitely say the same about you. So we kind of connected over a missing persons case, and that's, of course, the work that we do here is highly focused in missing person case areas. But I was fascinated by you. You came into this case and really took charge, and I just thought to myself, now that is a lady that can get it done.
I try
So
to.
I think you do a great job at that. So you have your own investigative group, but we know that you've spent a long time in law enforcement. Can you just tell me a little bit about your background?
Yes, I was in law enforcement for 24 years. I started out on the road just like anyone else, and on the road during my time there, I was able to make a good amount of difference in the communities in which I was assigned to. And then it went on from there for me to go to school resource officer, and I made great standards in the school resource officer department, and then I went to to investigation, to the investigation department. And from there, in an investigator, you get a lot of yellow sheets. Yellow sheet means cases that come into the department. And I was like on it. I never had a yellow sheet sitting on my desk. I closed all my cases immediately. And one day, it was offered to me to become the inspector of internal affairs. So, of course, I went to inspector of internal affairs. And from there, it was a position where I was the first female ever and the first Black female to be internal affairs. And while I was there, I won Officer of the Year and Officer of the State of South Carolina, and the first female to ever do so. And I also won School Resource Officer for the State of South Carolina. Then, once you get higher up in a position where it's a male dominant field, you get the good old boys that come after you. One day I was just fed up with the BS, and I said, what can I do to continue to serve? And private investigations popped in my mind. I went and visited a few agencies in New York and in Florida, and sort of picked my way as to what I really wanted to do for my agency. So I started my private investigation firm and security guard firm. I was able to go on MSNBC, not knowing that I was the first female in the state of South Carolina to open a private investigation and security company and own it 100%. So MSNBC had me do a pitch and to introduce me in South Carolina. And I got so many offers that I had to tell them, slow down. I'm just starting in South Carolina. I haven't ventured to other states, but I got a lot of offers to go to other states. Then during my career, I've had my PI firm now for 19 years. July will be 20 years this year. So I went out and was just making a name for my firm, being very professional and people who worked for me. And I got a contract with the presidential debate. And this is when Barack and Hillary were running. And so at the Palace Theater in Myrtle Beach, they hired my security firm. And on that time, they come out and they put things and they check things and they put things there and they see if a security company is going to find it. Well, when you have the best, we're going to find it and we're going to make sure we get back there. So we did that. And so during the presidential debate at the Palace Theater, they asked me to be in charge of security to make sure that everybody was where they needed to be. And I'm like, me? Why not someone else who's in Secret Service or whatever? So I took that on and I was interviewed by a lot of stations.
So your investigative group is called She Private Investigations and Consultants Group, but I kind of was thinking that that was an acronym for something, and then when I visited your website at she-pickgroup.com, I was able to see that it stands for See Her Empowered Private Investigations and Consultants Group, which totally embraces who you are.
Yes,
I
yes,
I
yes,
also
yes.
want to mention your nonprofit, which is shefoundationgroup.org. And so all this experience that you just spoke of, I mean, you've spent a total of like 35 years, I think I read, in law enforcement. Is that right?
Well, yeah, with everything now, it's ending up being 38 years. But yeah, but law
Wow.
enforcement, it has been something that I stumbled into because that wasn't my direction of what I wanted to do in the future. But yeah.
That's incredible. And also, they say if you ever want to know about a horse, check its record. And you certainly have made a name for yourself around investigations into crimes against women and girls. That's kind of been the sector that you've really focused professionally in and made a really large impact. You were just mentioning to me before we started our interview how you just did your rally this weekend on sex trafficking. And so I know that human trafficking is this is the awareness month of January. And unfortunately, it's not every month because it is every single day
It
that
is.
we write these stories and we see these stories. And I often have questions about what all is considered human trafficking or all the different forms of it because it seems to be a growing network and a lot of different concerns. But can you just walk us through some of the services that you offer in your investigative group, and what it is that you specifically do there for folks?
Well, my group is kind of unique, and it's not many of us out there. We actually go out and rescue the girls from human trafficking. They usually start out being a missing person, and everybody know the rule that as long as you're out there wandering, the first 8 hours you are approached by a trafficker. So we go out and we look for the girls that are missing, and we have our techniques to go through different data footprints to make sure if we see anything that looks suspicious, that may help us direct us into the knowledge that this person may have been a victim of human trafficking. And once we do that, we go through other protocols and make sure we get, I should say, the best intel so that we can rescue the girls.
And you also do a lot of proactive. You focus proactively, and also do you do some safety training and self defense? I've seen as well.
Yes, yes. I feel, you can't just always rescue people. You have to be proactive and get the necessary training out there for women and girls to learn how to protect themselves. We all know that police officers and police departments can't do it all, but we have to do all that we can to keep ourselves safe. So, learning the self defense, my self defense techniques are very much different from any other self defense class because I do not try to teach a person, a young woman, karate when they've never taken karate before. The pressure points are not the same on every human being. And we all know that these people sometimes are under the influence of some type of drug. So you know that some of those techniques of karate, and they have helped, I guess, for some people. But in this case, we teach them the cat fight self-defense. And it's a surprise technique that will get almost anyone of any age on any drug will give them the leverage for you to use it and get away from them. And that's what I want them to do. Self defense does not mean you have to stand there and fight with someone and hold them and do a pressure point. Self defense is meaning to defend yourself so that you can get away.
Right. So, how's your perspective on investigating crimes against women actually evolved throughout the years? I've seen this evolve. I was a flight attendant, and so we went through a lot of human trafficking training, watched a lot of videos, and then now in my career as a journalist, I just see it a totally different way than some of the training that I saw then. So, what's your opinion of how it's evolved throughout the years from where you started?
Well, it had an opportunity to evolve because of the lack of educating communities and businesses as to the aspects of how trafficking really happened. And for me, I think that was done a little bit intentionally to redirect you from how it has become this 150 billion plus industry that we are trying to fight right now. There are bigger players in this, bigger industries in this. So the way you were trained was just to target a very small fraction of a way that human trafficking was done. And so I make sure that I tell people the truth. I am not here to give you a textbook in example of how human trafficking occurs. I'm here to show you from realistic ways that I rescued girls and was able to see the bigger outcome of people doing things. So that is how I got it.
Well, human trafficking is a hidden crime. How do you uncover your cases and what challenges do you face, like bringing them to light?
Well, that is truly how sex trafficking is been able to grow because it is a crime that the victim do not think they are a victim. There's a grooming process where the victims have these traffickers as their boyfriends because they have groomed them to think that they are their boyfriend. So it's a way that between the victim not realizing she's a victim to no one knowing what to look for to show that she is a victim. So I tell parents all the time there are ways that you can know that your child is a victim of human trafficking. And one of the number one ways is when they come home with items that you did not buy, when they come home with jewelry you did not buy, when they come home and their hair is done and nails are done and you did not purchase it. And at the end, the big ticket is they don't have a job. So, how did you get that? So, those questions are very big leaders that your child or your daughter may be being groomed by a trafficker.
So you mentioned education and how that's kind of been a critical point in how the public perceives human trafficking and what is considered and what's not considered human trafficking. But what all sectors of education are important? Obviously, law enforcement, families, schools, parents. What other sectors are important, and where do you speak about human trafficking? Where do you speak most in this arena?
Well, I always go to the Black communities because those are the number one victims when it comes to sex trafficking. And I'm not just saying that because I'm Black, because that's what the numbers show. If you go to the National Association Polaris, they will show you that minorities are the number one trafficked victims. So, one of the other places that I think education needs to be is in the judges' chambers. The judges are not knowledgeable enough to make the proper sentence or to know what a young girl has been through before he sentenced her for a crime that is only the tip of the iceberg of what she's really been through. So I have not broken that barrier yet to be invited to a judge's conference in order for them to be educated. But right now, I see that is the key point where education needs to be picked up at. But I do, as you say, I do a lot of educating in my own communities. I offer parents to come in with their daughters. I offer for parents to sit down and listen to other mothers in order so that they can see they're not alone. And this is not a shameful thing for you and your family if your daughter is a victim of human trafficking. But that seems to be what many minorities families think, that this is shameful, so they won't tell anyone about it, nor get their daughters the necessary help that they need in order to be reacclimated into society.
Yeah, I mean, I could certainly see this being an uncomfortable conversation. I have two daughters myself, and I think I would be, and we're very upfront in our conversations about sex and other topics. And sometimes, it's more appropriate, I guess, for a lady to have that. I have friends, girlfriends, things like that that I've reached out to have conversations with my daughters. Do you think that it is scary for girls to learn at an early age what to look for? Or do you think, parents should monitor that, or should this be something that we talk about more freely in schools? Or is it inappropriate for schools? How do you feel about that?
If you as a parent has made the choice to give your child a cell phone, then your child is already having these discussions. Your child already knows about someone or heard of someone who has been trafficked. Your daughter, your child, however small they are, that you decided to give them that cell phone, knows a whole lot more than you do as a parent. Because in those chat rooms that I have been able to sneak into,
Yeah,
I
there's
would
there's
not have known any of that.
nothing good goes on in most of those. And I have a 12-year-old son who likes to play video games a lot. And I constantly try to, he does not have a cell phone, by the way. He's really not ready for a cell phone, but I try to explain to him, when he's playing these games, this may not be your 11-year-old friend. This could be a 45-year-old man. You just don't know who's on the other side of the screen, and kids just really have too much freedom these days. So I love that you shared some red flags and things for parents to look for, but it doesn't just
Before we
happen
go
to
on,
girls.
Troy, let me tell you something else. I'm
Mhm.
glad you brought up your son and he likes to play video games. Just 4 months ago, I rescued a young kid who loves to play video games, did not have a cell phone, but he was tired of his parents interrupting his games. So his mother moved him to stay with his grandmother. And he was playing games all along and was just failing school and doing everything. He met a guy online who happened to be one of the buddies that he would play the game with, and he told him, "You can come and stay with me, and we can build some games. We can do this. I'll let you build your own game." And he was very fascinated by it. He was 16. He left Columbia, South Carolina, ended up on the other side of Asheville, North Carolina, with this guy, and thank God he told one of his friends, "I'm going to go with Jerry." All the other kids in the group knew who Jerry was. None of them knew where Jerry lived. He ended up going with Jerry, and finally, one of the kids, when I put it out there in the gaming community that he was missing and that we were going to find out where he was, this little boy called me anonymously and told me the name handle and where he was. And his mother was able to come from Florida and had to go all the way to the outskirts of North Carolina in order to get him and bring him back home. The guy took him and put him outside at a mall, and he was able to get to the other friend, and the friend told her mom where to go and get him.
I mean, that sounds unbelievable, but I literally write these stories every day, and it it seems like kids do find themselves in these situations where they think they're talking with someone who's around their age group, but maybe a little bit older.
Mhm,
You do see the grooming come in and kind of take over, and they win the kid over, and then they leave with them. They'll either share their address, they get in the car with them, and sometimes they travel from several states away, and they'll oftentimes have, the Chris Hansen show. They have those kind of items with them,
mhm,
and it's really scary what the intentions were or how bad these situations could turn into. And then before they know it, they're in this situation that they can't really tell their parents about because they feel like they'll get in trouble. And then they're at an immense amount of risk. So
mhm,
what, um, I guess like, eh, you know, I was mentioning there's several forms of it, but it doesn't just happen to women, it also happens to boys. And we're seeing a big focus lately in the Hispanic community as well.
mhm,
We're seeing a
mhm,
lot of kids go missing, and you mentioned before a lot of these cases start out as missing persons. But the Hispanic community, especially since, as of lately, we're seeing a lot of ICE raids and things like that, where maybe illegal immigrants can't go to the police about a missing child
mhm.
that could be part of a human trafficking ring. Can you talk a little bit about that and what they could do if they're afraid to go to law enforcement, but they suspect that their child may have been like kidnapped or taken by a situation like this?
Oh, you don't even want to know the half of it. Over the past, I would say 6 years, I have been informed about concentration camps where someone was videotaping and secretly sharing how they were going and getting young girls from those concentration camps and children and giving them to traffickers so that they could make money from. Some of the parents didn't know who they could contact in order to get help to try and get their child back. And sadly to say, some of them who went to law enforcement could not finish the process because someone within their own community told them to stop it. So we have a really big problem with the rich, or so to speak, more prominent people getting these Hispanic females and children from these camps where they're trying to hide out and just survive, and putting them in that life of human trafficking. So I always tell people, and is coincident that you ask about that, because I am the president of a Hispanic organization. And last night, well, I should say not last night, is when I completed it, but I started last week when I saw the deportation of everything going on with our current administrator, that I decided to make a app so that someone who was possibly not knowing what was going on or was taken by someone who was claiming to be ICE, because those people are out there as well. They're really not with ICE, but they have those jackets and vests that they have put on to say that they were taken by ICE. So I want to make sure that the Hispanic community have that knowledge, to make sure that you're actually, or someone in your family is actually being taken by ICE, and ask them for identification. And there are other things that I'm teaching them to do as well. So the Hispanic community is really a hotbed for trafficking right now. And again, it is so hard to stop because of the families being scared of being deported. Um, and calling law enforcement to get help to get their young people back. But just like you spoke a few moments ago, human trafficking has several different forms. We're seeing organ trafficking, we're seeing baby trafficking, and we're seeing sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Baby trafficking is on the rise. They are taking people's babies, especially the ones in different places that get pregnant and they say, "Oh, you lost the baby." I'm not sure of the foundation for it, but I've talked to several other organizations that are in the areas in which this is happening. in other countries that it is amazing. And the organ trafficking, that is almost a whole nother rising level of trafficking right now.
I
Missing
think people
people.
don't understand that there is this dark web, and it I've never been on the dark web myself, but it seems like it's just a menu, like a McDonald's
Mhm,
menu of
mhm.
everything from organs to drugs to children to CSAM materials.
Yep,
And I mean, a lot of times they're teachers and they focus themselves into like churches and places where
yep.
kids are accessible to them.
Mhm.
It's terrifying. And you mentioned the organ donor trafficking, or I guess they're not donors if they're being trafficked.
Yeah, right.
This is frightening to me. And it seems like such a theory. It doesn't seem like a real actual thing, but it is. And we know that it
It
is
is.
because we see the stories on it.
Mhm.
How does that happen?
You know, there's a lot of people out here who are suffering from different things, from dementia to kidney failure to heart failure, to liver failure. And these doctors are matching people up with a donor by doing what they do. These are doctors who are in this space because you have to be a match in order to take someone's organ. And this is how it is happening. I want to point out some cases that bodies of people were found and their organs were missing. The young boy out of Augusta, South Carolina, he was in a he was a wrestler and he was found up rolled up in a mat.
Yes,
There his
I remember that.
body, but his organs were not there. You
Wow.
have young intelligent males that are missing. They found their body, but his a few of his organs and his brain was not there.
That's incredible.
So, with them keeping it hush hush, the police department is not saying anything, the State Department is not saying anything. You have to be careful. If you get the remains of your loved ones back and you are able to have that body examined, you take it to a funeral home that you trust, because the whistleblowers have been the funeral homes. What
Yeah,
happened to the organs? They're not here.
that's
So we
so.
have so many problems of people just not being knowledgeable of it.
I think, and it being so unreal, like nobody could imagine that happening, but what an opportunity for, you know, for that to happen. Certainly does. I do see how it could easily happen, and the
Just to
funeral
tell you,
homes.
Troy, I don't know if you saw it, but maybe a month ago they did a blurb about it, and it came on the media about uh, people were snatching organs and body parts, and that there is no law against you taking body parts. There is no law against it.
Wow, I feel
So
like so
they
many
found
people are going
out.
to be doing their research now and like figuring out how does this happen and why are there no laws? And that was something that I
Mhm.
did want to also ask about is do we have the right? I know you work a lot in South Carolina, which is how we connected, but do, do we have the right legislation in place in South Carolina? We're seeing a lot of stories about sextortion where predators are like asking children to like send a photo of them, and when they do, then they ask them for money or they're going to share it with friends or family. And then these kids are like, mowing grass or, doing little oddball jobs to raise enough money to keep um, their extorters paid. But then they run out of the ability to do that and oftentimes commit suicide. So do we have the right legislation in place, or is there work to do in that area with our General Assembly as well?
Troy, one thing I can say about South Carolina, they will put the laws in place. They will handle each one. There's a law that came out to cover sextortion in the state of South Carolina. My thing is just like sex trafficking. The state of South Carolina got an A of the laws that they have put in place. But what good is a law if you're not enforcing it?
And that circles back to the education part, right? Educating everything from officers to attorneys to district attorneys to prosecutors,
Exactly.
judges. Yeah, and often I guess those early warning signs to parents. So I think this is
Hmm.
something we need to talk a lot more about and share more information about. You provided a lot of talking points to us, but I'm hoping that you're able to get into some of these areas, where you can make a significant difference. Especially schools. I know I keep saying the word schools. It's a sensitive area, but I went to a school where we had no sex education whatsoever, and I felt like that was a detriment. As I got older and I learned, more about it, I was just seeing ways where I could have, been more protective of myself, and certainly wish I'd had that information a little earlier, because I certainly knew what sex was a little earlier than I was told, or it was
Hmm.
ever discussed with me. So, and as you mentioned, with a phone, um, kids, they're seeing this stuff anyways. So, like, if you're
Hmm.
waiting until they're older, then you're gonna be the last one to tell them, right?
There are two things that I really need to cover is deep fake porn videos. Pornhub right now is being seen by more teens than adults. Things that are happening to little girls, little sisters, little cousins are from little boys watching Pornhub.com and doing these things to their little sister or little neighbor. So I
Mhm.
just really want parents to find out all the information that they can about these deep fake porn that's going around that your daughter's face or your son's face may be on, but it's not them. They told you it's not them. But because you see it, you go in and you chastise them, and then they do the ultimate and commit suicide because you didn't believe them. And then they investigate, and the mom finds out this was not your daughter.
So interesting that you bring this up. It's something that I've never really talked about with anybody, but I think about it a lot. In our line of work, we always have to have an image, and we often get images of people that are kind of terrible or they have a bad background or whatever. So we cut people out. And I'm always thinking to
Hmm.
myself, about all the pictures that I've posted on my social media, thinking, oh, I'm making memories or I want to see these again, but I'm literally sharing them with thousands of people, many people that I don't really know. I mean, some of them I've known, my whole life, but some of them are like distant contacts. And I'm just putting those photos out there into the hands of people who now with AI and things like that, they can actually take pictures of your children and put them into sexual compromising positions for
Yeah.
gratification of themselves. But then that material becomes so valuable on the World Wide Web, I guess the dark web. Um, and it's very profitable. I mean, there's a lot of money
Mhm.
to be made on these types of materials. That's frightening.
Yes. And all this time we get Facebook and we're like, "Oh my gosh, let's put my baby. This is her first day at school. This is little Ashley's first day at school." You just gave a predator everything they need. This is Ashley. This is how old she is. This is that. And this is the school that she goes to. Have you talked to your children and trained them, regardless of who comes to you, what is our family passcode? You
Yeah,
don't
all
give
families.
any information. So there are ways that I teach families to be safe with their children, and these social media sites were a real setup for the nation for us to become prey to all the things that are about to happen to us now.
So the FBI has a great program called Take It Down, and people can go
Hmm.
to FBI.gov to get more information about
Hmm.
that. If you feel like your children or even
Yeah.
yourself, if you've ever sent photos out and you want to try to get those taken down, there certainly is a movement to do that. And
And I
also,
was so glad when they did that.
Yeah, they have a lot of, of course, the IC3 hotline for reporting
Hmm.
sexually, explicit material and things like that. So there are some tools in place, and then of course, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children,
And exploited
NCMEC.
children. Mhm.
Yeah, I do a lot of their trainings, just so that I'm better at, reporting these stories. But their trainings are available to absolutely anyone, and they have a great
Anyone.
training
Hmm.
network. Yeah, so I like to tell people about those. So, Chandra, how can people get into your realm? How can they learn from you? I love that you've got, all these things that you want to get out there. How can people do that? Do they just visit your website?
Yes, they can visit my website and schedule an appointment with me to talk to me about whatever situation they list into the information block on the website.
Okay. And so if you could just give one piece of advice for investigators and people that advocate in this field, what would that be?
Stay educated. It changes day by day by day, especially if it has anything to do with technology. Never think that what you know now is going to be the same for tomorrow. Stay educated, stay on top of it. And when someone tells you something and they know something different, get educated by them. Offer to partner up with them. We don't need a whole lot of different nonprofits. If nonprofits can come together and say the same verbiage and be together, it will be more helpful to the public than you ever could know.
I agree with that very much. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people doing like duplicate things. And then a lot of times it feels like agencies aren't they don't want to take information from one place because then the other it looks like they're not favoring the other. But I do want to make sure that agencies are willing to learn from people like you who have
Mhm.
spent 25 years in law enforcement and another several years outside of that doing this kind of work and have kept up with the changes, as you say, daily. It is
Mhm.
daily, and I see it change every day myself. So um, what do you think about just regular everyday people? What can we do as everyday people to make a change in the world of crimes against girls and women and of course human trafficking?
When you hear of different seminars in your community, attend them. It is so many seminars that I put on, and maybe it's 10 people in the room. But the next week, I get about 20 calls about your daughter doing this or doing that. Make time to attend those seminars. You will learn a lot. And don't just think that no one wants to listen to you. There are organizations that you can just pick up the phone, tell them what's going on in your household, and they can help you. I hated it to hear a parent say, my daughter's out of control, that I can't do nothing with her. Let's not put that bad mouth on your child. There is something you can do, and you can tell someone. Parents, stop suffering in silence until you lose your child. Get help for them. Somebody else can help you with your child and will.
What are some of the most significant challenges that you face when trying to help these families as an investigator?
Oh my gosh. The main one is that the mother wants to be their friend, so they tell me to back off because their daughter needs to live, and she's not doing anything any other little girl would do. And so at that point in time, I back up. If you tell me to back up and back off, that I'm being too hard when you ask me to save your child, trust me, I will just as fast take my hands off of them. Parents, just because your daughter is feeling uncomfortable with someone addressing her issues that can see them because you could not, because you were too close to it, there's that saying, you're too close to what's going on in order to see what's really going on.
Yeah, and don't you
So
think it's a deeper thing? Like, it's not just wanting to get your fingernails painted or like have a cute hairstyle this week, but it's more about like being loved.
that's it. Being loved and paid attention to, that you see the difference in your child's eye. You see that sparkle is gone from their eye. You, as a parent, need to be there in order to know those things. You see that oh, she said she need a break and she left the house. She said that she usually go to Mary's house or whatever, so I'm not too worried about her. Those are the behaviors that traffickers get the girls to do. For them to leave home, they'll bring them back the next time. They leave home for 2 more days after that day, and then she'll come back in 2 days. And when he takes her on the third time, you're able never to see her again.
Yeah, we don't do sleepovers at my house. I've told my kids when they get their own house, they can invite whoever to sleep over there that they want, but we do not do sleepovers.
My
I'm
mom
terrified.
never did.
Yeah,
My
I
mom
mean,
had 6 girls.
6 girls.
6 girls. No sleepovers for us. Never did. You better
Wow.
not part your lips to ask in front of no one or anything like that. We never did it. Not even cousins.
Yeah, I mean, I even as a kid, I don't remember spending the night with very many friends. Maybe I went on field trips with school that were out of town, but that's about it. And I don't think it's a safe thing to do with your kids.
Not
And a lot
nowadays.
of parents, a lot of parents aren't in tune or they trust their kids too much, and kids are slick. Mine
Yeah.
have tried to trick me several times into, being able to do things that I would not ordinarily let them do. I'm pretty strict
Hmm.
with my
Yeah.
kids. And that could be that could be a bad thing as well if you're too strict with your kids, and then, they don't want to be held down. They need to experience life and that sort of
Hmm.
thing. So I guess there is a flip side to that.
Yeah, but the other flip side is that you get them involved. You get them to try to take notes and say, okay, I want you to do a segment with me, and I want you to tell me how you feel about it and how you think your friends would feel about it. Oh my gosh, when I tell you, for my godchildren that I have no children. I'm out here saving everybody's children. I have no children. I had cancer when I was 26 and could not have kids. So when I find kids that are interested in what I do and I give them a topic and let them interview with it, oh my gosh, they become so great at saving other people.
Well, you and I have had a few phone calls, and many of them have been centered around either the work that I'm doing or the work that you're doing, and we're both very passionate people. Um,
Hmm.
and I mean, I picture you in your car just tearing up the town to get to these cases, and you do. I mean, you go in the middle of the
Yeah.
night, you go the distance, and you mentioned before, sometimes you come in and the parents are like, they want you to back off.
Hmm.
And that, like, I'm just the kind of person that, I really do need to kind of take charge of a situation to be my best and to provide the best
Hmm.
work. I do think that I know what I'm doing in these situations, and if people could just trust me to kind of do that work. But sometimes when you get that pushback, it makes you feel like you're not wanted or you can't be
Hmm.
the full potential that you know that you could do. So, what motivates you to continue this work despite the challenges or like the emotional toll that it takes on you? Because that's tough.
Let me tell you, I'm so glad you asked that because I can say I can't say a time when it has not been that when the parent told me to back off, that their daughter is good, she's a good girl, she just had that one incident. Guess who ends up calling me for help?
Yeah.
Their daughter. Every single time that a parent told me to back off, their daughters called me when they got in trouble.
Wow. So,
I
I
was their
mean,
first call. I was the one who had to bring them to their mother and said, "This is where your daughter is in the hospital." And she called me to come and help her. So I
that's
don't take
incredible.
it personally now, but when it first happened, I'm like, you asked me to come in here. I've been doing this. How dare you tell me to back off because you feel your daughter is now capable of making good decisions? But I always, sat there and I would have my moment. And then I remember that what God said, that's not directed at you. You just do what you need to do because the next person is waiting for you. And that's the attitude that I took. And after me coming to that conclusion, every single time that a parent told me to back off, the daughter was the one who called me back and said, I need you to help me. I'm over here. He left me. He beat me up. I'm bleeding. I'm hurt. Can you come get me? And I'm right there.
That's incredible. I think a lot of times families don't understand what they're amidst either, for the inside looking out.
Hmm.
Things appear differently. So, what are some of the goals for your agency? I know you want to do more speaking engagements and get your knowledge and your information out to more people. But what else do you want to do at the ShePick group?
Well, we want to train more female investigators. We want to get more women who've been in law enforcement or attorneys to come forth and be a part of the group that we can train them as to what to look for so that we all can go out here and handle the need of these parents and these young girls in order to get them the justice that they need. So we're looking for more female investigators in order to go down this road with us, to save the parents, to save the children, and to educate the community in which we all live in. Because education is the first vital thing that we need to do so that we can safely save our communities. I'm not asking anyone to go out there and take charge and get a gun. No, I'm asking you to take the training so that you will know how to successfully and inclusively help save your community and any other young girl in your community.
Are you guys equipped, or you girls, you ladies, are you ladies equipped to handle LGBTQIA children as well?
Oh, yes, 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 yes. The cases that I have been having lately, and the association of the LGBTAI, it is so good for me because the information that I give and the resources I'm able to direct other people into is a partnership that is so necessary. You cannot say something that you have not been in. So as I say, She Private Investigations Group, those group entails people who can actually handle on a consistent basis. That's those set of people, this set of people, black people, Hispanic people, everyone has someone who can really relate to where they are and resources that they will need after going through something like being sex trafficked. So definitely that has been a part of my agency from day one because I didn't really tell you how I started this is because going out answering calls, going to domestic violence, going to a LGBT community, and nobody want to really go into the house and ask questions because it's a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, or they say things that's derogatory to them. And I go in just like anybody else. It's a couple. I need to separate you, find out what happened. And so I also bring in solutions. So as an officer, it's just not there for you to break up things, but give solutions. And when I saw that my solutions were helping, and those people were either together and getting ready to get married, or she left that abusive relationship with her children and she left alive, and I wasn't getting calls out there, and that's what made me go back and was like, what happened to them? What happened to her? Oh, they got married. They're doing good. They moved to another state. Oh, she decided enough was enough and she took her kids and she left. And I'm like, this is what I need to do. This is exactly what I need to do.
That's one of the ways that we've talked about, LGBTQ specific elements of cases. And I remember when I
Mhm.
first called and I was trying to explain things to you, and I was on a road trip. I was driving through Atlanta, and you were like, Troy. And what you came back to me with was knowledge and
Mhm.
experience. And
Mhm.
I have all the confidence in you. In fact, you would be first on my list to call if I had a family that needed somebody in that, with that kind of knowledge. Because I'm explaining
Mhm.
the apps and the dating apps and like how they work with
Yep.
you, and literally you like shut me down and you came back to me with all the things I was getting ready to say to you. So I was quite impressed with
Mhm.
that. Um, so yeah, I feel like you're I asked that on purpose because I feel like you're very equipped, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
believe in all of your knowledge and all of your experience. I look very much up to you. Um, I think when I first saw you, I certainly didn't realize. I mean, your face does not match your experience. You are a woman
I'm
with
old.
immense
Say it. I am old.
experience. But you're experienced and you're really I just feel like you're very decorated in this realm of things, and I hope that more people reach out to you and rely on you for your knowledge and your style. Um you don't play. You will get it done. I would just call you and step back and watch you work.
Well, thank you
So
so much. I try to stay in the books with training of what's going on around the world to try to be preventive in stopping it in other ones instead and make sure that the public knows about it. So when I get something and it seems like, oh, I believe this has happened here before, I get on and I talk about it.
and you're great to give advice too. I mean, I've come to you with several things that, you know, I needed a sounding board on, and you listen and you digest and you come back with great advice. So for anybody that's listening to this interview today that, you know, is either a survivor or, you know, that advocates in this space, um, what advice would you give them, especially survivors? How can they be impactful through maybe your organization or others in the area?
Well, survivors, I would tell you, you have survived a traumatic thing that happened to you. It's not over just because it's not happening anymore. You need to get trauma informed resources and direction now in order to make sure that your mind is headed in the right direction. We all know that if it happened one time and you go back to that place or you get that feeling one day and you go back there, it's because it wasn't healed. Please get healed before you follow up with someone to come out and tell your story on something. And I tell people all the time, they're like, so and so want to tell her story. This happened to her last week. She won't tell it with me because she's not healed. And that's not what I need to hear. She needs to
Healing is
have
so important.
informed mental health counseling in order to heal before you go out and tell someone or tell your story of how it happened
And I think sharing your story is a way of healing as well, but certainly as you mentioned,
when
that
you're ready.
trauma-based therapy, yeah, that trauma-based therapy needs to happen before you're out
Mhm.
there sharing your story. Um, that's so important. I'm glad that you mentioned that. Investigator Chandra Cleveland, thank you so much. She Private Investigations and Consultants Group can be found at She Dash Pick Foundation, or it's She Dash Pick Group.org, right? You tell us, what
No,
is it?
it can be found at she-picgroup.com or our foundation at shefoundationgroup.org. And you can
Use
call us at 803-897-7008 or 855-218-7252, I think.
Okay, Investigator Chandra Cleveland of She Private Investigations and Consultants Group. Thank you so much. I'm gonna have you back here sometime very soon. I want to break down, you know, a little bit more of the tools and some of the, you know, some of the symptoms and signs and things like that as well. So I think we can make probably a series out of this and keep it going all year long because people need to know so many things.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll do this again soon.